Hey guys, I'm Kirsten and you're watching Kirsten Megan's Book to Reality. Welcome one and all to the second episode of Book to Reality, the ACOTAR Thorns and Roses edition. La! Court of Thorns and Roses. It's a beautiful masterpiece. I love it so much. Well, you know, I mean it gets better, but anyway. So I'm going to be picking up from where I left off, which was me primarily focusing on Feyre's dilapidated cottage. I mentioned in my last video that I was going to be focusing on 4 different elements of the book, which included Feyre's cottage, the Spring Court masks, Lucien's dagger and the ash arrows. I've decided to push aside the ash arrow and possibly Lucien's dagger. I'm thinking I'm maybe going to try and focus on just 2 elements per book, and that would include Feyre's dilapidated cottage and the Spring Court masks. So there you go. So with that covered, let's go draw! Okay guys, so this is me working on the final concept shape for Feyre's cottage. As you can see, I'm starting with 2-point perspective drawing. I just find it a lot easier to see the different details that I'm kind of trying to emphasise when I'm designing. Using both 2-point perspective and 1-point perspective definitely helps me to illustrate main detail points on whatever the concept is that I'm creating. 2-point and 1-point perspective, they're like a really good way of showing like sort of 3D objects in a sort of 2D manner. So although they are 2D and they're flat on the page, they bring the thing to life. Definitely helps to create a form so that I kind of know exactly what I'm looking at, which is why I always kind of start with shape. Even though I have a sketchbook to work on, you might have noticed that I'm working on this tan craft paper, and the reason for that is it helps to really elaborate the shadows and the tints and to show kind of depth, and it allows me to use the white pencil to then create a background highlight just to kind of bring the actual drawing off of the page. The materials I used were technical pencil using 0.5 lead. I used a 0.1 and 0.5 fine liner. The 0.1 I used just to outline the lines that create the drawing as a whole, and I used the 0.5 fine liner to outline it. I was using pro markers as well, yellow for creating the buttery light just to iterate where the windows exactly are. I was using a cool grey for the shadows. I was also using a Uni Posca 0.7 white pin pen for the tints and the highlights on the cottage, and I was just using a basic white pencil for the background highlighter. So once the perspective drawings are done and I've done like various angles of them, I can then start to create elevation drawings. I should also just mention that none of these drawings are to scale at the moment. I'll do that much later on, once the entirety of the concept is fully designed. So with the final concept shape down, I then basically moved on to the basic design and shape of the windows. As seen in my last video, I was using a select few reference photos that specifically captured the kind of aesthetic I was imagining, and I then enlarged them and began creating small swatch designs from the windows based on the research images that you can see there. Okay guys, I've just stopped the video for a second. This is just a little insert to sort of give you guys insight into how important thorough research is. While I was videoing that section, the point that you saw up to of me drawing the windows, my camera died, so as the battery was charging I decided to pick up the book. And what I discovered was that Feyre mentions her cottage again with more descriptions. It just goes to show how important research is, and how if you're going to do something from a book, you have to make sure you read the whole book. You can't just read that one section and then go, oh that's fine. I mean, you probably could, but where's the fun in that, right? So here's what it says, and see if you can figure out what it is before I tell you. I reached a bend in the road that I could have navigated in the dark, and there it was. So small. The cottage had been so small. Elaine's old flower garden was a wild tangle of weeds and blooms, and the ward markings were still etched on the stone threshold. The front door, shattered and broken the last time I'd seen it, had been replaced, but one of the circular window panes had become cracked. The interior was dark, the land undisturbed. Okay, I'll give you like 2 seconds here just to see if you can figure out what the issue is. Okay, you've got it. So here's the issue. But one of the circular window panes had become cracked. Circular. The drawings that you just saw me do were all squares and rectangles. It never even crossed my mind that they might be circular. I was looking primarily at stone cottages that were based kind of in Scotland, you know, old stone cottages that were on farmlands or within forests, and they all had these little tiny square windows, and so that's where I was designing that from. And that's great because I was still referencing back to what I was looking at, but the description says that it's circular windows. Because I found that, I'm going to have to go back in, do some research on circular windows, see what kind of designs I can find. I might just do a circular window that just has those kind of lattice shapes that I was already kind of working on, because it's a poor dilapidated cottage, so it's not going to be anything, it's not going to have intricate designs or anything on it. But I would still like to do some research on that and just give myself some examples. So back to the drawing board. Okay, so after finding that quote, I then had to do further research on the book. So I went back into Pinterest and I found some examples of like round window styles and shutters that I quite liked and that made sense in the context of the cottage. I was primarily looking for kind of old windows that were like clearly weathering and ones surrounded by stone, because obviously the cottage is going to be made of stone. I also wanted to see if I could find references to like shutter design, because most of the shutters you see are usually on kind of rectangular or square windows. Once happy with the collection I found, I, as per, took them into Illustrator to create boards to print and group them into themes. Those themes being style, interior and exterior looks. So once printed, instead of using my Pritt stick as I was using before, I decided to actually print them on some sticker paper. Usually in this kind of context I would use spray mount glue, but without the extraction or like an appropriate spray booth, it's too dangerous and messy. So I decided to actually use sticker paper because it keeps the images really clean, it stops the sketchbook pages from sticking together, and it's just a lot neater. So once I stuck them down, I began annotating the images, highlighting the specific details that fit the description that is described in the book. I can then use those references to then start creating concepts. I started drawing out kind of small swatch designs, which allowed me to basically mix and match with the styles that are on those photographs specifically. So with those small ideas kind of sketched out, I could then go back to the craft paper that I was using before and begin coming up with kind of cleaner designs and possibilities. I began creating them in a 2-point perspective, but I then decided that for the design purpose of what I was doing, it was kind of unnecessary and just taking up a lot of time for details that you couldn't even really see. So I then just continued on with simple front elevation sketches just to show the sort of aesthetic that I was going for, because I'm really just designing the style of the window at the moment. I know they're going to be round, so I really don't need them to be in 2-point perspective. I also used pro markers to suggest material usage. So as you can see, the brown pro marker is the wood and the actual window frame as a whole, and then I'm going back in and using that yellow pro marker to show the light coming through the window, so where basically the glass would be. I sometimes use the cool grey pro marker just to show the shades and tints and stuff. I also drew a rendered wood grain, which you can see as a close-up to the side here. And the reason I did that is just to kind of specify that that's the material that these windows will be made out of, because although this cottage is made of stone, the window frame is described as being wooden, so. Okay guys, so this is just a quick summary of basically what I've done so far between both videos. We started off with basic reference photos, just collating a bunch of little reference images just to kind of correlate the information that we found in the book, and then annotating it to find the specific details that we liked from them. Did this also for the windows and the door. We then moved on to sort of larger reference images of taking them from the ones that I really liked from the smaller ones and sort of narrowing in on the very specific details I liked. For instance, this overlap here of the roof, the just overall design of this one I really liked, the shape of this one, and the roof on this one I really liked. So from there we then started working on just basic shapes of the cottage and how that would look. Basically taking it from this, I always start with a shape. I was doing that in 2-point perspective mostly, just so you can see more detail, and that's kind of where we got to on that. So that's where I finished off last week. Then we moved on to detail drawings of the cottage. This is the final shape, so it's going to have this little entryway. It's very small. It's got, you can start to see the sort of dilapidated roof. We started with 2-point perspective, 1-point perspective here, another 2-point perspective, and then you've got your left hand elevation, front elevation, and then right hand elevation. Got that final design down. I then decided to move on to the windows and doors. So I started off with windows. I found again the images that I liked the most, upscaled them so that I could basically design from these ones specifically. So these are the shutters and this is the window. Started making sort of little thumbnails of different designs that they could be. So if it was going to be the crosshatch, if it was going to be a kind of lattice. Then I discovered, as you well know, that the windows were going to be round. So moved on from there, did some more research, which I did here, of more round windows. These are all just kind of round window designs, ones that I like, ones with stone surroundings and how they kind of meet the wood. I also chose ones with nice designs or ones that kind of open up. I did some shutter round windows, but I don't think I'll go with this because I don't really like it. And then this was me kind of just like working out how I was going to do shutters on a round window. And this is me just combining these designs together. And then from there, we then moved on to starting to design a specific window design. We started off with a kind of 2-point perspective. I decided not to keep going with the 2-point perspective because it didn't really add anything to the design of the window. I'll do that more when I've picked one of these and I've decided that that's what I'm going to go with. I quite like just the basic one. I think it works well considering what it is. I quite like this one just because it almost looks like a prison window. And because she thinks of it as like such a horrible part of her life, that kind of worked well. But again, I'm not sure. I also kind of like this double cross here. So I think I might kind of go with this design. I really like that, and it kind of adds a bit more than just the basic round one. And this is just the wood grain kind of effect that I was talking about, if you can see that. So that's where we got up to. That's just a summary of what we've done so far. I've now finished A Court of Thorns and Roses, powered through it, finished it at 4 AM on Wednesday morning because I was determined to get it done. I love the book, but it's my least favourite in the series, and I kind of knew what happened anyway. I don't have many markers here because I decided to do 2 things, and they're kind of at the beginning of the book, and I kind of knew that there wasn't much at the end that I wanted to sort of work on because it's mostly characters and stuff at the end. There's not really many props that I think that I really wanted to work on that sprang to mind. So finished that at 4 AM on Wednesday morning, picked this up about 11:30 on Wednesday morning. So yeah, I didn't get much sleep, but hey ho, it's totally worth it because I love them. But that was Wednesday morning. This is now Friday afternoon, and I'm like halfway through the book. So as you can see, it definitely is my favourite. I absolutely love it. I'm so excited. I've missed quite a bit at the beginning, but mostly because that's more of a continuation on from A Court of Thorns and Roses, so it's a lot of things that we've already seen in places we've already been, so there wasn't really much that I was kind of looking at that was like, oh well, that's new, I'll put that in. But we kind of started seeing new places and more of the world from sort of where this first tab is. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to start adding, I got little tabs because I've realised that because this isn't my favourite of the series and because I have a special edition of Court of Thorns and Roses, I wasn't too bad writing in it, but because this is like an original cover than what the new covers are, and it's my favourite, I was kind of loath to write in it, so I've been waiting on a tab book that I've just recently gotten, inspired by Megan's little tab book, which I thought was very cute, so and it seemed really helpful, so I got one of those and I'm just going to go in and start marking up details and stuff that I've liked from these 3 tabs that I've got so far. So let's go do that. Okay, so with the tabs that I'm using at the moment, I'm currently using specific coloured tabs for very specific things. So purple tabs are like places, cities and such like. The blue tabs are buildings that I thought would be quite nice, and the orange tabs are props and objects. Okay guys, so that's us for today. That's kind of where I got to in terms of concepts and continuing to read the wonderful A Court of Thorns and Roses. Again, I say this in every video, but I'm going to keep doing it. The new book, A Court of Silver Flame, comes out on the 16th of February 2021, so this year, so it's in like 9 days or something. Oh my god, it's like in 9 days. That's amazing. Well, it'll be less than that when you get this out, but oh my god, that's so cool. Right, anyway. Megan's video will be out next Sunday. I loved Megan's video. I think the lovely thing about this is because Megan and I are both doing it from our own houses, when she posts, it's all completely new to me. I don't see anything that Megan does beforehand, so me and her are constantly seeing new things, and we're constantly seeing how each other works. And even though we went through the whole of college together, there's always that really nice aspect of we're so focused on our own work at the time, we never really got to see everyone else do their work. So that's really lovely to see. For anyone who's interested, Snoop is completely on the mend. She has one more tablet to take tonight, and then she is basically free of her medication. She's healthy and happy, and that's all I can ask for, really. So that's us for today. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you guys are all well and safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!